Hello, slightly unusual video today. I've had this computer come into the workshop for some upgrades. The customer has brought their upgrades with them, and they've purchased 11900K i9 processor and 3080 Ti Asus GeForce RTX TUF gaming graphics card, and they've also bought an MSI Mag Core Liquid E360 all-in-one cooler. The 360 is new, that's new. The graphics card and the processor are second-hand. Now, they've done their research. The motherboard that's in it does support the processor, so that's all good. So let's just have a very quick look at the computer and see if we can spot anything that's weird about it. I've taken the side panels off already. So I'm just going to unclip the camera and we'll do a little quiz, if you like, for a bit of fun. If I take the camera, I haven't powered it up yet, but there's a few things I've noticed. If I bring the camera and then bring it down slowly, like this, shout when you see something weird. Because I spotted it straight away. And what I'm looking at, just in case you can't see anything strange, is that screw there. That screw there is different to the other screws. I don't understand that, because when you buy a power supply it comes with a set of 4 screws, doesn't it? So that annoys me. Let's just twiddle around the back. Now with the side panel off, we get the look at the back. Now this kind of thing, that I quite like. I don't mind that. It's not really attached, but it is sort of attached, so I don't mind that. I've changed my opinion on things like fan wires and especially ARGB wires, because ARGB wires are very, very thin and fan wires are quite thin as well. So if they're cable tied up with the cable tie gun, then they can be in quite tightly, can't they? The PC is designed to be upgradable, isn't it? So you buy yourself a case and then you keep reusing it and you change the internals, and because it becomes a hobby as well as, you know, something to play your games on or do your work on or something like that. So when it comes to cable tying things up, you can spend as long as you want doing it, but if you're just going to put a cover over the side so you can't see it, so you know, why bother? The main reason I could see to bother is just because it is nice to have it tidy, but the actual reason is to keep the cables away from something that might cause problems, like for example the back of the processor, which might get warm, or the back of the motherboard, which has got pins on it which might damage the cable if they're pushed against it. So when you've got cables, if you run them and cable tie them away from objects like that, then I think that's a good enough reason for doing it. But that one goes straight across the back of the processor, doesn't it? It just goes straight across the back of the processor. So, and these have that's on quite. It's not. Yeah, I don't think they've got a cable tie gun, because you can get. I've got a couple actually, but the main one I use, I'll just dig it out of the drawer. The main one I use is this one, which is a bit old school. But that will put the cables on tight. These cables ties here are pretty slack and loose, so I reckon they just pulled them until they clicked a bit and then snipped them. If you're going to use a pair of scissors to release the cable ties, be very careful. And again, this is where I've changed my mind about cable tying ARGB. You can use one of these, which is a cable tie snipper. Can you see it's got hooked ends, so that when you put it on there you can push it in and it loops around the back of it, and then it snips it without snipping the wires themselves, so it reduces the chance of damage. You can still damage cables with this, don't get me wrong, but it just makes, if you're using scissors to do it, you can see how problematic that is. And if you're using cutters like for example this, the slightest slip with that and you're going to go straight through the cable, aren't you? So I bought the special cable tie removal tool because, you know, why not? So that's the back of that. There's a lot of cable stuffed in there. I'm not, it doesn't matter about that, does it? Because they're out of the way. There's a bundle here, which is a bit weird. What I can't see is where everything's plumbed in. It does have an ARGB controller on as part of the case. There is a button that says RGB there. I'm pretty sure that goes up to the top because there is a button there, that one there, which is for the mode, and it's got a separate reset switch, so that when you press that, that changes the ARGB. I prefer to have it so that you don't have that mode switch, because it obviously just says mode, and that I don't like that, because you should be able to control the ARGB using software from within Windows and change it to what the colors you want. So that's the preliminary investigation. There's a mechanical drive in there. I think it's got an M.2. If we go in here, what is that? What is that? There's 3D printed plastic panels. The fans are NZXT, as you can probably see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and presumably there's one in there. I don't know. We'll have a look in a minute. So that's at least 4 NZXT fans in an Antec case. So whether they bought those fans separately and fitted them, or whether they took them from somewhere else, I don't know at the moment. I'm going to say they took them from somewhere else, because if you look at that there, on that fan, it's got a thread. So that's been screwed in. So I think these fans have been cannibalized from somewhere else, which is fine, I suppose. That's a bit. How have they attached that? Have they glued? What have they done? They glued it. There's something weird in there. That one might be glued on. I don't know. So we've got 3D printed panel there, there, and there, and then a massive one here. Now, to save time, I've already unclipped the front, so I know what's coming. So if I just pop this front off like that and just move it round to the side, right, that's better. So you've got 1, 2, 3. That bottom one is the different fan. Got different fan blades. So these are NZXT. This one is, I don't know what. Maybe this one came with the case. I don't know. It's got different blades on it. But you can see there, so they've got this 3D printed whatever it is, and they've squidged it between the fans and then screwed the fans in. So, yeah. Right. I'll get it all set up and we'll power it up and we'll see what happens next. Right, so we're all sort of connected up. I mean, it's just a keyboard and mouse and an HDMI and a mains lead. I'm going to flick the power on. Notice that the power supply's got a hybrid mode. That just means that the fan is quieter and it only comes on when it's, when it needs cooling. So hybrid is slightly misleading. I think they're trying to do it. In terms of hybrid is used because either it's completely passive or it's got a fan on it. This is a halfway house when the fan only comes on when it gets hot. That's what hybrid means, which is slightly misleading. But anyway, I'm going to flick the power on and we'll see what happens. First thing I notice is the motherboard LEDs come on. That's a bit annoying. So that generally means that if you shut this PC down at night, if it's in your bedroom, those lights stay on. So they haven't bothered configuring the BIOS for that. Let's power it up and see what they have done to the BIOS. So I'll just press the power button and then I'm going to tap delete ferociously for a bit and we'll see what happens. Oh, RGB, and there's RGB at the front, which just caught my eye. So we've got RGB that at the moment is Rainbow Unicorn because that's the default. So I'm tapping the BIOS and we should be going into the BIOS, and here we are. So we're in the BIOS. So did they change anything? Right, XMP is enabled. So the customer said that occasionally it doesn't boot, it hangs, and then when he powers it off and powers it back on again by pressing restart, it reset, it works. And he's got XMP2 is selected. That'll be why that is. So if I choose XMP1, we'll fix that. So that'll provide the correct settings. I'm not going to tweak anything else just yet, but I'm going to change that because that's the wrong XMP settings. So save changes and reset, and then it'll turn back on again once it's done that. So let's spin it round. So you can see you've got ARGB there, ARGB there, ARGB there. They're all rainbow. Oh. What? You might have noticed these 3D printed panels that they've put on. Let's spin this. That makes quite a good anti-sag bracket for the graphics card, doesn't it? Okay, that's the only good thing. This, I don't know how they've attached that. Have they glued it in? And it looks like they tried to make something for there to cover that cable, but then realised it wasn't gonna work. So they sort of glued it on and then took it off. So that's just ridiculous. And there's a massive lump of filament at the front, and there's one there, and there's one there. So they tried to hide the cables by making 3D printed panels. Right, it's booted. The lights haven't changed, so they haven't bothered to. They didn't bother setting up the lights, so it's rainbow unicorn all the time. Bit annoying. I've also just spotted on the RAM the film that they used to cover the little metal decal is still on there. That will start to peel as the glue deteriorates, and I don't know how well you can see it, but it is slightly peeling off already. I'm not saying that if that bit of plastic falls off it's going to fly into the fan and blow the computer up, but it just seems a bit sloppy not to remove that. So let's get medieval with this. So that's one panel off. That's another panel off, and you can see they glued it on. So that's what I mean about the half pipe sort of situation. They made that. I don't know what glue they used. It's quite good. That is nasty. So let's get busy with the cable tie snippers. So I'll drop that on the floor. I'm going to save the cable ties so we can see how many we actually got. Right, so finally it looks a bit more like a normal PC, doesn't it? That is how much 3D printed guff was in it. That's how many cable ties there were, plus the one that pinged off somewhere. Don't know where that went, but it's going to be found at some point in the future. You can see where they glued it in. Now it looks much more like a conventional PC, doesn't it? The ARGB is connected. It's just they didn't bother putting any software on to control it. And that one at the bottom there is an original Antec fan. All the rest are NZXT and they're out of the way. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. So this is all going to get transplanted into a new case and we'll see how that goes. Thanks for watching so far. You've missed a lot of swearing. But anyway, let's do the next bit. Right, so there's a slight change of plans. That's kind of end of the road for this video really, because the parts that we're going to get transplanted aren't now. The customers rung and said actually they've had a change of heart and they've decided to buy a whole new motherboard, RAM and processor and a new case, and some of the parts are going to be transplanted but not very many of them. So essentially they're having a whole new machine built, which I think is a separate sort of topic. So that's kind of the end of this video. There's a few closing comments that I want to make. One of them is when they assembled it, when they glued all the parts in, they basically destroyed the case because the glue's, it's just knackered really. I might be able to get some acetone and take that off, but it's quite problematic. They must have been pretty confident that they finished the build when they started to, but most people have got internal triggers, haven't they? When you do something daft, a little voice inside you goes, don't do that, that's stupid, don't do that, that's stupid. But they didn't have that voice, or they didn't listen to it. I may have reluctantly, well, not reluctantly, I quite enjoyed it, but I may have inadvertently destroyed a unique example of a PC. They may have only made a PC with one of these panels and not bothered with another one because of how much filament they used and how annoying it is. They had to design it so that the panels fitted. They still didn't fit, and you may have noticed, and you're probably screaming at the screen, you may have noticed that big chunk at the front had a massive crack running along the edge. So they glued it in, they screwed in the fans, and that just cracked that edge. I didn't mention it because I thought if you watch to the end you'll realise that that I did notice it, but that's a bit of a shocker. If you didn't notice it, just rewind and you'll see it. So that's kind of the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. This is by far the worst PC I've ever seen for sort of homemade bodges. This is nailed it, isn't it? Nailed it of the PC world. This is like a cake wreck. It's astonishing. But anyway, if you've got any questions about it, stick them in the comments. If you've got any comments about it, stick them in the comments. Liking and subscribing is appreciated. And thanks for watching.